Hello everyone, this is part 12 of What If Naruto Was Adopted in a Good Home, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Zabuza leaned up against the wooden bracing as he waited for his signal to move. He was cloaked by a genjutsu and hidden by the rafters of the roof. There was a decent line of sight to the compassion field, but his primary objective was to keep an eye on the crowd and watch for any irregularities. Irregularities. That was what they had said. Zabuza knew what that meant though. He was supposed to watch for any sign of sound nins making a move, and stop them. Preferably by making sure they wouldn't cause any more trouble in the future. Which, of course, was just a nice way of saying he was supposed to K them. However, he couldn't be detected until the invasion began, due to the numerous treaties in effect. It wouldn't matter that Oto was about to invade them. If he was found to be the person who struck first, Konoha would be at fault, and that would give the other villages all the reason they needed to attack. It was a tangled web of words the hidden villages supported themselves with. It was actually terrifying when Zabuza thought about it. The only thing that kept the entire continent from descending into bloody war was a few words spoken between men that didn't mean them in the first place. Any perceived slight or wrong step could be disastrous for everyone involved. Even if one of Konoha's biggest enemies showed up during the exam, Zabuza wouldn't be able to do anything, not unless it was an enemy of all the villages, and there was no one around to see it. And in a crowded stadium, that simply wasn't possible. Answer: Zabuza was doing one of the things he did best, waiting. Anyone who would talk with him would assume the demon of the mist was more likely to charge into the middle of a battlefield screaming over doing anything stealthy. And for the most part, they would be wrong. That wasn't to say that Zabuza didn't enjoy a messy, brutal battle, but he wasn't acknowledged as one of the best silent assassins for nothing. When it came down to it, the biggest part of pulling off a silent K was waiting until the perfect moment. The man who had taught Zabuza the art of Silent King had impressed upon him the necessity of this fact. That Zabuza did the majority of his king with a giant sword made it more challenging to make it silent, and made him all the better for it. Grinning in anticipation, Zabuza waited. Ibiki waited behind the corner for his target to move into position. The target was approaching rapidly, just a second longer. Strike. Ibiki leapt from his hiding spot and snatched Naruto out of midair by the back of his collar. Naruto instinctively tried to struggle, but Ibiki had known the blonde for much his life, and sent his hand quickly to the spot of Naruto's demise. Naruto burst out in a fit of giggles, trying to restrain himself as Ibiki tickled him mercilessly. It was an old tactic, one that Anko had started. Naruto was only ticklish in one spot, along his left side, but once Anko had found it, Naruto never stood a chance against her in any fight. It only became worse when Anko had shown Ibiki where it was. Ibiki didn't subdue Naruto this way very often, but as the interrogator had said on many occasions before, though definitely in a different context and about different people, he loved to watch M squirm. The blonde wrestled himself out of Ibiki's grasp, still sucking in air as he tried to calm himself down, and glared at his adoptive brother. What the hell was that for? Ibiki smiled his frightening smile. You're about to go participate in something that might change your life forever. I wanted to make sure you weren't too stressed. Yeah, you just like messing with me. Ibiki didn't comment. Naruto went through the familiar seals for the privacy jutsu, speaking only after he finished them. So are you going to be at the stadium? He asked, trying to sound casual. I take it you know what's going to happen. Ibiki continued without waiting. We need to keep it contained as much as possible, and I'm needed elsewhere. I'm in charge of directing the forces on the northeast wall. So you're not going to be at my match, Naruto said in a flat voice. Ibiki sighed internally, but didn't show it outwardly. I know you want me at the stadium, but Hokage-sama needs me on the wall. Besides, by not being at the fights, I'll have a legitimate reason for requesting a copy of the tapes. I'll need to see if anyone would be a good choice for the information division. The fact that I'll have a copy of you beating the hell out of that arrogant Hyuga for the house will just be a bonus. Naruto snorted. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Ibiki's face softened ever so slightly. You know I want to be there, right? Naruto didn't meet Ibiki's eyes. Yeah, I know. Then he brightened. Guess you'll just have to make it up to me. Yeah kid, I will. Do good. Shino was mentally reviewing his strategies when he felt another presence fall in beside him. You're almost late, he noted. Naruto waved it off. I got here before my match started. I just didn't want to stand out here with you so everyone can stare at me. He looked around. And where's Sasuke? Shouldn't he be here already? Shino mildly adjusted his glasses, a motion that Naruto associated with annoyance. It would seem that he has not arrived yet. Perhaps he will be disqualified before he gets the chance to make a fool of himself. Arriving late would make a bad impression for Konoha, though I wouldn't put such an illogical action past him. Hey, knock it off. He's still my teammate, you know. Shino merely looked impassively at Naruto, the barest hint of a raised eyebrow denoting his skepticism. Naruto shrugged. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him either, but he's my teammate. That means I'm the only one who gets to badmouth him. So knock it off. Alright, it seems everyone's here who's going to be here, Genma announced. The rules for this tournament are the same as the ones in the prelims. There are no restrictions on techniques, other than not to endanger the audience. You fight until your opponent acknowledges defeat or is S. If I decide a fight is over, you will stop immediately. Now if the other contestants would proceed to the box. Uzumaki Naruto, Hyuga Neji, it is time for your match. As the other contestants trudged up to the box, Naruto smirked at Neji. You know, I'm going to make you pay for what you did to Hinata. I wasn't there for it, but I heard about your match. And what you did just wasn't right. Course, I was gonna kick your ass anyway, but that's just cause you're a jerk. Neji looked on coldly. You are an idiot. You are not fated to win this match, much less make me pay. Naruto continued as if he never heard his opponent. But you know, you should be glad it's me you've got to fight, and not Shino. He wants to K you for what you did. I'm just gonna kick you around for a while. Neji barely contained a flinch. He knew the Aberrane was looking for vengeance, even if it was futile. At least once a day over the past month, Neji had found Kikai bugs on his person. It was usually only one, not enough to concern himself with, but it sent a clear message. I can get to you anywhere, even in the confines of the Hyuga compound. A brief shudder went down Neji's spine. Genma waited for them to say something further, but when silence settled between the two he shouted, fight. Naruto sprang backwards, creating more distance just as Neji sprang forward, attempting to get in close. Fitting his hands in a familiar seal, Naruto created a dozen clones, some dashing into attack as others stayed back and waited for an opening. This attack is futile, Neji proclaimed as he disrupted Naruto's clones with strike after strike. I have already figured it out. One of you always stays back, avoiding my Juken strikes. You are merely a coward, scared of being hit, and a poor excuse for a shinobi. With his final word, Neji broke free from the clones and struck the one that had fallen back, sending a sly blast into Naruto's heart. Blood dribbled down Naruto's chin as he coughed once, before he smiled up at Neji. Stop thinking you know what you're talking about, Barker, Naruto insulted as he exploded into smoke. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Neji barely had time to register the voice behind him as his eyes picked up the massive shuriken flying at him from all directions. He anticipated my attack. He purposely left a clone behind to set up this attack, and now I'm surrounded. I did not think I would have to use this technique against this fool, but obviously there is more to Uzumaki than meets the eye. Neji hurriedly expelled chakra from all his tenketsu, spinning violently. A dome of chakra formed just as the shuriken reached him, bouncing off harmlessly, only a few remaining solid afterwards. Naruto looked on with wide eyes, surprised that his attack had failed. Suddenly, he grinned. Well, this is gonna be a lot more fun than I thought. With a fearsome battle cry, all the Narutos descended on Neji. Neji was only able to destroy 15 of the clones before he was overwhelmed by the numbers, and was forced to start his spin again. The numerous clones flew back before puffing into smoke, the real Naruto skidding along the ground as Neji smirked. This is the Hyuga clan's ultimate defense, the chitin. There is no way to defeat it. No one since its creation has figured out a way around it. You cannot beat me at close range, and you cannot touch me at a distance. You were fated to lose this match from the moment I was announced as your opponent, so save yourself the embarrassment and forfeit. Hell no. I'm gonna be Hokage someday, and there's no way any future Hokage would lose to a guy like you. Future Hokage. Do not try fool yourself. Only a very few are destined to be Hokage, and there is no way as last like you would ever become Hokage, Neji sneered. Yeah, well, I guess I'll just have to prove you wrong. With that, Naruto charged, engaging in close combat. Neji artfully dodged each attack, doing all he could to get away from the blonde, surprised that he had to work this hard. He seemed to have sped up dramatically, like Lee did after dropping his weights. Little did Neji know that Naruto hadn't been idle during their exchange of words and had stealthily deactivated his gravity seal. The duo quickly fell into a rhythm, with Naruto attacking and Neji defending, neither gaining any ground against the other. Sadly, the beginning of the end quickly came as Naruto hit a patch of loose gravel and his foot slid off balance. Neji took the opportunity and landed a devastating Juken strike to Naruto's ribs. Without giving the blonde a chance to recover, the prodigy drove hit after hit into the Jinchuriki's torso, incapacitating him. Neji jumped back to prepare his final attack. This is the end, last. I told you of your fate, but you didn't listen. Now learn. You are within the field of my divination. Haka Rokujian Sho. 2 strikes, 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, 32 strikes, 64 strikes. Naruto flew back from the force of the final hits, groaning in pain. I have just sealed 64 of your tenketsu. You are unable to use your chakra, and unable to move. Give up before I'm forced to KO you. A pained wheeze caught Neji's attention as it quickly became a harsh chuckle. Do you think all I did for the past month was goof off? I knew I was going to face you, so I came up with some backup plans in case you decided to seal my chakra. The Hyuga prodigy's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I can see your chakra system, and it is sealed. Even if you did have a plan, it either failed, or you are now unable to effect it. It is my victory. Naruto's laugh surged for a brief moment. Ha! Don't you remember the rules? Not much of a genius then if you can't remember something so soon after being told. I'm not out of this fight until you KO me or I give up. And since I never run, and I know I'm not going to it's not your win, team. Naruto slowly pushed himself up from his prone position to his feet. Unsteadily, he smirked. I live in the same damn village as you. Did you think I wouldn't know what a Hyuga can do with their taijutsu style? It's only one of the most docented things in the village. And with as long as the Hyuga clan has been around, don't you think ways to fight it haven't been invented? I've been pushing out a constant field of chakra ever since you used your second kaiten. Neji smirked down at Naruto. Did you really think that would work? I've already told you, I can see your chakra coils, and they are sealed. If you really had read up on the Hyuga clan, you would know that there is no way for you to block the Haka Rokujian Sho. Yeah, I read it, and unless you're watching a different fight than me, you would know that I didn't block it. I took it, because I knew I could. My field of chakra lessened the effects enough for me to do what I'm about to do. Unseal all my tenketsu. Impossible. Neji roared. Watch me, Naruto countered. Delving deep into his wells of chakra, Naruto pulled on his coils until they felt fit to burst, only to smile and explode. At least, that's what it looked like to all the Hyugas watching. Naruto had built up his chakra to the point where Neji's blocks were unable to contain him anymore, leaving Neji to stare on in amazement as Naruto did the impossible once more. Defeat the Hyuga clan's perfect attack. Fine, if you will not learn your lesson from that attack, I guess I will have to teach you once more, Neji sneered. With as much chakra as you just released, you will not be able to continue much longer. The prodigy dashed forward, much as he had at the end of his preliminary fight, with the intent to KO. He drove his hand forward, glowing with chakra, and pushed it into Naruto's heart. Or rather, it would have if Naruto hadn't moved at the last second, parrying Neji's blow and trapping it with his other hand against his shoulder. You know, another thing I learned when I was reading up on the counters used against the Hyuga clan was that they are very dependent on their hands and arms to use Juken. Let's take care of that problem. Neji attempted to pull his arm away, but Naruto had his hand in a tight hold that was slowly breaking his fingers. Naruto grinned widely as he brought his right arm up and hammered it down at an angle. Crack. Ag. The sickening sound echoed around the arena as Neji howled in pain, clutching his broken arm. It was no longer at the correct angle, and there was an obvious bulge where Neji's bone was pushing against his skin. Now, are you going to forfeit, or keep fighting? Naruto hissed as he yanked Neji's head up to stare him in the eyes. 2. Wham! Naruto wiped the spit off his face after he sent Neji across the arena with the force of his knee. You know, I actually like you more for fighting, Naruto decided, watching Neji stand up, now looking as haggard as Naruto. Neji turned his body so his broken right arm was away from Naruto, and entered a familiar stance. But not the familiar stance everyone was expecting. It was a Goken stance, guy's general style. Neji was not proclaimed a genius for nothing. Juken was Neji's first and most powerful style, but Goken was something that Neji picked up after training with Guy for more than a year. It was impossible not to. Also, he knew his Juken was now all but useless. Juken counted on the arms and hands to deliver its strikes, and with a broken arm and several broken fingers, Neji was no longer able to use it. However, Goken focused primarily on using legs and feet to attack. So even if the user had their arms shattered, they would still be able to fight. Unfortunately for Neji, Naruto had already seen and defeated a Goken practitioner, one who was far better with the style than Neji. Naruto created 3 clones and sent them after Neji, setting up his final attack. Hey Neji, you've actually done better than I expected. I never thought I'd have to pull this out against you. But I promised Shino that I would make sure you pay for hurting Hinata, and that's what I'm about to do. Biting his thumb, Naruto leapt high in the air, forming his hand seals. Kuchios, Yatai Kuzushi no Jutsu. A large toad, one easily 30 feet tall, puffed into existence above Neji, gravity quickly pulling it down. Neji did all he could get out from underneath the building-sized toad, and barely succeeded in keeping from getting crushed. Even so, he wasn't quick enough to evade the orange toad for long as its tongue snapped out and wrapped it around Neji, bringing the Hyuga up to look Naruto in the eye. Do you forfeit? I'd rather not K you, but if you won't give up, I'm going to have to, unless Genma over there stops the match. And frankly, I think he's enjoying this, so I wouldn't count on that. Keep in mind that if you don't acknowledge defeat, I'll have Gamiki here beat you against the ground until every bone in your body is broken. I'm sure soon it could fix you back up, but you'd probably have a lot of trouble moving around for the rest of your life, much less have a chance at being a shinobi again. So, do you yield? Neji turned a harsh glare on Naruto, but there was nothing he could do. He couldn't attack, he couldn't get any rotation for a chitin, and if he didn't forfeit, he would probably yes. With a deep sigh, Neji shouted loud enough for the entire stadium to hear, Examiner, I yield. Hyuga Neji forfeits, Uzumaki Naruto advances. Genma announced. Before having Gamiki release Neji, Naruto spoke again. I don't know where you got caught up with this fake bulls, but you're gonna end up S if you keep it up. Some people don't take being called a loser as good as me. And one last thing. Know you're getting off light for what you did to Hinata. Shino would have had his bugs eat you alive. Back on the ground, Neji was carted off by the medics as Genma regarded Naruto with a curious eye. Was it really necessary to do that? Naruto shrugged. He had it coming. And it's not like he was going to listen any other way. Besides, it's not like I did any permanent damage. The arm was a clean break and will heal fine as long as none of the medics screw up. Speaking of medics, you should get over there to get checked out. A quick shake of the head was Naruto's response. I don't really need it. I heal pretty quick. Besides, I want to be here for the big event. The way Genma's eyebrow disappeared into his bandana told Naruto he knew what was going to happen today but was more surprised that Naruto knew. Just don't he said finally. I don't want to have to be the one to explain that to Anko. Shaking his head, Naruto made his way from Ibiki's poker buddy and up to the contestants' booth. As one of the next contestants is not here yet, we will postpone the match. Shikamaru's head whipped around to face the examiner. My match is being pushed up. He worried quietly. Next match, Sabaku no Kankuro vs Aberrane Shino. At least I still have a bit of time. I just hope Shino doesn't take his guy down too quickly, Shikamaru muttered to himself. Kankuro thought about forfeiting, so he wouldn't have to show off Karasu before the invasion, but quickly remembered Gaara had forbidden him from participating. Which was just as well with him, Kankuro had no death wish. Not to mention that by fighting he had a chance to advance to Chunin, a rank he should have gotten at least a year ago. With that thought in mind, Kankuro jumped eagerly into the arena wishing his opponent would hurry up. Shino seemed to realize how impatient Kankuro was and walked sedately down the steps and to the center of the ring. Aberrane Shino vs Sabaku no Kankuro. Fight. Kankuro leapt back as Shino tossed a trio of shuriken in his direction, only to have them intercepted by his puppet, Karasu, who Kankuro had undone from his wrappings just in time. Kankuro directed Karasu into a charge, but instead of fleeing as most did, Shino stood his ground. 15 feet from the Aberrane, a hidden compartment on Karasu's wrist dropped open, launching a poisoned knife at a blistering speed. Even so, Kankuro's mouth dropped open as his opponent just stood there and took the hit square in the eye. Before Kankuro could make sense of what just happened, bugs seemed to eat away at Shino's face before the illusion failed and the Kikai dispersed, heading for Kankuro and Karasu. The Suna Genin was forced to duck as Shino swept at his head with a devastating hook punch, quickly followed by a low sweep that connected with Kankuro's ankle. Before Shino could do anything more, Karasu moved in to intercept him. Shino jumped back to avoid a trio of poisoned senbon the puppet had just sent his way, ending up 10 feet from Kankuro, who was panting behind Karasu. "You're better than I thought," the puppeteer complimented. "I wasn't expecting to take this long to beat you." "Do not presume you have won yet," Shino said blandly. "I am not as easy to defeat as you think." With that, Shino drew 2 kunai and tossed one at Kankuro's feet, the puppeteer catching sight of the blast slip just in time to get out of the lethal blast radius. Even with his quick escape, he still got singed. Oddly, the chakra lines connecting him to Karasu were getting weaker. As the dust cleared, Kankuro could see the Aberrane's insects crawling along his chakra strings, gorging themselves. They seemed to pour out of his opponent's body, with more and more appearing every second, a black wave of bugs rushing toward him. Having seen what the Kikai could to someone during the prelims, Kankuro knew that was a bad thing. Then it happened. One of the chakra strings snapped, and the corresponding arm on Karasu went limp. If anyone knew how to read Shino's moods and reactions as well as Naruto did, they would have noticed he was pleased with that turn of events. Kankuro smirked. "So you think it's that easy to take down Karasu? Think again." The once limp appendage of the wooden puppet sprang back to life, sending a trio of kunai at the bug user. Even as good as Shino was compared to some of Konoha's genin, he could only avoid 2 of the kunai. The last SD deeply into Shino's left bicep, sending a vicious spike of pain through his body. "You've lost, Aberrane. The poison that kunai was coated with will render you completely paralyzed shortly. You have 3 minutes, at most, to defeat me. Then it's a good thing I've already won." Shino let fly the kunai Kankuro had almost forgotten about, the explosive note separating puppet and puppeteer as the Kikai continued to chew through string after string of connecting chakra. Kankuro started to strafe around to a position behind Karasu but could see his opponent slam his hands into the ground and whisper something as a wall of earth sprang up directly in his path. Gritting his teeth, Kankuro dove around the wall, only for another wall to appear between him and his puppet. He swerved around that one only to come up short of his intended target. He felt his chakra leaving him rapidly, and when he looked down, Kankuro could see a shifting mass of black covering him. He despaired as he felt his remaining chakra strings disappear, and watched in confusion as the earth walls he had so desperately tried to avoid twisted away, revealing them to be nothing more than a genjutsu. Then he saw his opponent walking calmly towards him. "The Kikai currently eating your chakra have been specially bred. They are known as burrowers to anyone not a member of my clan or to those who survive an encounter with them, that is. They cannot fly, they move slower than a normal Kikai, and are useless as scouts. However, the amount currently covering you can deplete a Junin's chakra supply in less than a minute. I released them at the start of the fight, and they submerged themselves to just under the ground, out of sight. From there, it was a simple matter of maneuvering you to where I wanted you. From the pained expression on your face, I surmise you just figured out that you will run out of chakra long before I succeed to your paralytic concoction. Forfeit, or S from chakra depletion." The middle child of the Kazekage gritted his teeth, trying to hold out and knowing it was a futile battle. At this point, he would be lucky to be able to stand in a few days, much less be able to fight. I surrender. Sabaku no Kankuro forfeit, Aberrane Shino advances. The black mass of insects moved as one when Shino called them back, and Kankuro gave a deep sigh of relief. Just before he passed out, he murmured, "Upper left pocket, antidote." One of the medics who had rushed the field retrieved the small bottle, palming it as he guided Shino out of the arena. Next match, Sabaku no Temari vs Nara Shikamaru. Temari whipped her fan around, creating a gust of wind before unfolding the weapon completely and jumping on it, riding the air to the center of the ring. "So troublesome," the lazy genin muttered. "Wonder if I can just forfeit instead." "Kick her ass, Shika." He heard Ino cry from up in the stands. He sighed. "At this point, it'll be worse if I forfeit." "Come on Shika, get down there," Naruto insisted, coming up behind him. "Naruto, if you knock me off this balcony, I'll KO you in your sleep." Shikamaru turned on his heel to see his friend trying to hide his position by swiftly putting his hand behind his head and chuckling nervously. "About time," Temari groused as her opponent reached her. Shikamaru just huffed. "Feel lucky he didn't go to sleep on his way down here," Genma smirked. Temari grunted. Nara Shikamaru vs Sabaku no Temari. Fight. Temari immediately swung her fan around with a blast of wind that knocked Shikamaru back into the wall, only for Shikamaru to crumble into the remains of a Tsuchi Bunshin. Temari cursed and jumped as she caught movement out of the corner of her eye. Her opponent's shadow chased her, growing thinner the more she backed up, eventually running out 3/4 of the way across the field. So, he can only go so far. And the wall's shadow boosts his reach. But as long as I stay past this point'll be fine. Temari caught Shikamaru's eye across the battlefield, and growled in annoyance. He didn't even have the grace to look interested. He just stood there, staring up at the sky, watching the clouds float past. Shikamaru closed his eyes and entered his thinking pose. A minute later, his eyes opened again. "You've lost," he muttered, not to anyone in particular, but Temari picked up his words on the wind. The Kazekige's daughter gritted her teeth and sent another barrage of wind in Shikamaru's direction, dust kicking up in its wake, obscuring everyone's vision. She twisted her fan into position and deflected the kunai flying towards her head. Noticing her opponent's shadow darting towards her, she smirked. The smug expression quickly fled when she saw the shadow cross the line she had marked. Of course, as the sun goes down, his shadow will get longer. Her arm suddenly sent messages of sobbing pain to her brain, causing her to falter, but she was beyond the shadow's reach for the moment. A kunai was stuck in her left bicep, and as she glanced around, a brace of shuriken flying at her position made her jump back, sending another wind blast at a suddenly destroyed Tsuchi Bunshin. She made to turn back to calculate her opponent's current range, only to find she couldn't move. She tried to fight, but it was useless. Shikamaru had used the shadow cast by the depression where Naruto's toad landed to boost his shadow. She found herself in the middle of the arena staring into the bored eyes of her opponent. And much to her dismay, he had a clone with him. The clone drew a kunai and placed it millimeters from her T. Her eyes flicked to the judge and gave a look of assent. Winner, Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru released his jutsu and watched with satisfaction as Temari's eyes widened at the disappearance of his clone. It went away in a puff of smoke. A freaking illusion. That wasn't another Tsuchi Bunshin, she exclaimed. The lazy genin shrugged. Konoha nin don't work alone. In real life, that would have been a teammate, not an illusion. Besides, if it works, why waste the chakra? Temari just gritted her teeth and growled as she stomped off with the medics to get her arm looked at. As soon as Shikamaru made his way back up to Naruto, Kakashi and Sasuke appeared in a swirl of leaves. A roar from the crowd signaled their approval of their flashy entrance. This is certainly troublesome, Shikamaru stated after the cheering settled down. Not only is he allowed an extension past his normal match time, but he is praised when he arrives late. Naruto shrugged. Most of them are civilians, what do they know? And teams used to getting what he wants. And after a month with Kakashi-sensei, he was bound to pick up some of his habits. He paused. I wonder how his fangirls would react if he started reading Ero Sennin's books. Troublesome bastard would probably start a fad. The duo settled into watching the match, and Naruto noticed something after half a minute or so. That dirty, thieving rat. He stole Lee's taijutsu, Naruto accused as he shot up. I may have only fought Lee once, but that fight lasted a good 20 minutes. I had to tear that style apart in my head before I could even touch Lee, and I had to pull out all the stops to beat him. I know Lee's style when I see it. It kicked me around the floor enough. Shikamaru frowned. He did have his bloodline activated. You two were moving so fast I assumed it was to track the fight better. He looked intently at the last Uchiha Saiyan. I wonder what else he's copied. Naruto scowled. HMPH. Doesn't look like it's going to matter. Gaara had just knocked Sasuke across the ring with a ferocious blast of sand, and now was forming a complete sphere of sand to protect himself. Those with above average sight were able to catch the formation of Gaara's personal jutsu, Daisen no Mi. After testing the sphere's integrity a few times, Sasuke glared at the barrier separating him from his opponent before flipping himself up the arena wall and sticking himself there with chakra. He formed 3 hand seals before thrusting his hand downward and concentrated. Chakra was forcibly pulled from his coils and collected in his palm, changing to lightning at Sasuke's command. The assassination jutsu wavered slightly for a moment or two, but Sasuke controlled it. Feeling the point of completion, Sasuke bolted down the wall, handheld electricity trailing behind him, oblivious to the Ozense's thoughts on his accomplishment. As he reached his target, the last Uchiha thrust his arm forward and roared, Chidori. Sasuke smirked as he felt his hand LF, but his smug expression lasted only a second. The sand surrounding his arm compacted, and Sasuke felt his bones break in several places. The howl of pain from the dark-haired boy seemed to act as a cue, for as soon as it split the air, all hell broke loose. Most of the Ozense immediately collapsed, and Baki appeared next to Gaara, a stern look on his face as he scowled at Genma. Naruto followed closely behind. Your brother and sister are in the infirmary, so I suggest you get there quickly if you want to make sure nothing happens to them, Naruto said in response to Gaara's impassive stare. Gaara nodded and narrowed his eyes at Baki before they disappeared in a swirl of sand each. So you're just going to let them go? Genma asked as another Junin jumped down to take Baki's place. Naruto nodded as he confronted an invader of his own, covering the medic who was rushing a protesting Sasuke off to safety. From the way his opponent moved, Naruto was glad he deactivated his gravity seal. Yep, we made a deal. Nobody goes after them and they won't participate in the attack. He shrugged. It got rid of one of their elite Junin and their secret weapon, didn't it? Genma had to concede that point. Fine. He locked kunai with his opponent, and they struggled for a moment before the special Junin spit his senbon directly into the man's eye. Zabuza grinned madly under his mask as his sword decapitated another invader. He hadn't had a chance to cut loose like this since Gato's camp in Wave, and even then, the opponents weren't as scared as the ones he was facing now. They still weren't enough to cause him constant life-threatening concerns, but they were more than enough to give him some fun. The stands were cloaked in dense mist of the demon's making, and the invaders were stupid enough to keep coming after him. They were obviously using the Iwa theory of war: throw enough men at a problem and eventually you'll win. The fault with that plan was that Zabuza doubted Oto and Suna had enough men to properly assault the well-warned and prepared Konoha forces. Zabuza could see Kakashi across the stadium, tearing his way through invaders. He grinned as he thought about the next Junin happy hour. Kakashi didn't always make it over there, but when he did they'd have to compare body counts. They didn't get the opportunity to do so in Wave, like he did with Anko, and he was looking forward to seeing how the legendary ninja stacked up against him. Out of the corner of his eye, Zabuza caught sight of a pair of conscious bodyguards who were simply standing around. A glance at their hatei showed they were from his home village. Sending a nin careening into a wall, Zabuza hopped over to them. They both immediately raised their weapons, but didn't attack him. Amateurs, the demon grunted, turning away from them. If they were just going to defend the daimyo, they were almost useless. Action always beat reaction, so if they weren't going to take any initiative, the daimyo was as good as S. At least they recognized him and feared him for it. It was nice to see they still hadn't forgotten about him back home. Kakashi paused as he saw a slender hand melt out from the back of the upper row of stands and slip a kunai in between the ribs of the Oto nin that was charging him. His implanted eye focused on the seats and he saw beneath the genjutsu there. Sakura, he said plainly, mildly surprised that she had just killed someone. Her face was slightly green, but the expression on it was stern. Kakashi-sensei, she answered, nodding respectfully. You probably should be looking for shelter or helping the villagers into the escape tunnels. It was voiced as a suggestion, but it really wasn't one. She shook her head, taking him by surprise. She had never disputed any of his orders before. There's too much of a chance that I'd be ambushed by someone I couldn't beat out in the village. And I would only be able to take a small number per trip if I took them from here, not enough to make the distance worth it. They'll be better protected if I stay here to deal with the invaders. Kakashi was impressed. He had given her a way out of the fighting and she didn't take it, knowing that there was a better than average chance that she'd end up staying here. Sakura had obviously come further than he had expected. Very well. Stick to this area, and play defensive. Don't go out hunting. Most of the invaders are beyond your level. Her fingers twisted into a set of seals as he finished his last sentence and the nin advancing on his right burst out screaming, his face blistering. He glanced at his student as he slammed a kunai into the enemy's tea. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking what she had done. He believed he had been set on fire, and his body was reacting to that, she said clinically, and Kakashi knew she was slipping into a detached state of mind to deal with the battle. Most nin did it. It helped deal with any feelings that might conflict with their job. There was time for guilt later. Naruto s the tea of his attacker and turned his attention to the pulsing purple barrier atop the cage box. He knew there had been an explosion there as the attack started, but had been occupied until now. With a few quick bursts of chakra, Naruto launched himself up to the roof of the stadium to get a closer look at what was going on inside the barrier and what was happening to the first man to ever care about him. From the rooftop he was granted a fairly good panoramic of the village. He could see several snakes had just burst through the eastern wall, and was torn with a sudden realization. As much as he wanted to go help the first person that care about him, his village came first. Naruto made a split decision. Biting both his thumbs, he streaked the blood across his palms. He ran through a quick series of hand seals and jumped to the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Enormous plumes of smoke burst from under him, and the Chunin hopeful stopped long before he hit the ground. Glaring across the distance, he gave his orders. Gamaiki, Cheromaru, take out those snakes. With pleasure, Naruto-sama, Cheromaru replied, and Gamaiki simply nodded. Keep the collateral damage down as much as possible, and make sure you don't hurt any Konoha forces, got it? After receiving affirmative grunts from both summons, Naruto leaped from their backs and started towards his leader. It's a fox. The demon brat must have turned on us. One of the fighting Chunin shouted, staring wide-eyed at the four-tailed fox bounding toward him alongside a giant toad. Shut up and keep fighting. Ibiki ordered, his large fist connecting with Asuna Nin's face and dropping him. One swipe of a kunai made sure he wouldn't be getting back up. The fox is on our side. Do anything other than aid it and you'll answer to me personally, the interrogation head snarled. But sir, no, you will do as ordered. With a thunderous crash, Gamaiki landed on the snake that was about to snap down on Ibiki's squad, and Cheromaru tore out the tea of the enemy summon a moment later. Two more of the snakes twisted to face the smaller arrivals, and hissed loudly as they saw their brother S. A tail tapped Gamaiki on the shoulder and the silent toad turned his attention to Cheromaru. Oil. At their heads. A brief nod was all the confirmation needed. As the two snakes charged, they were amused to see a concentrated blast of oil coming their way. Without a flame, the oil techniques of the Toad clan were largely ineffective. However, it had been a long time since they had last faced a kitsune, and forgot a very important fact. Kitsune Bai. The ghostly blue flame immediately ignited the Toad's oil, and the two snakes were burned severely before disappearing in a dual puff of smoke. With a complex twist of his tails, all the fires set by Cheromaru's attack flickered violently before snuffing out. Another explosion attracted the attention of the Toad and Fox, and they leapt off after it. Back with his squad, Ibiki smirked at his underling. Told you. Gaara stood in the infirmary, arms crossed and looking for all the world like a statue. Rather, he would if not for the still bleeding wound on his shoulder. Finally, one of the medics stood up to the shukaku container. Baki tried to wave off the black-haired medic, but was roundly ignored by both parties. Please have a seat so I may take a look at your shoulder, Gaara-san, Haku said politely, a gentle smile on her face. My siblings will not go undefended, he stated, not noticing as his sister started in surprise behind him. Kankuro would have, but he was still unconscious. They don't have to, Haku reasoned. However, I must insist that you sit down so that I may examine you. It wouldn't do if your wound became infected. I will not leave them, Gaara proclaimed. You don't have to, Haku smiled, before gesturing to her aide. Takashi, please go get Gaara-san a place to sit while I examine him. The light-skinned aide nodded before hurrying off. I understand you were wounded by a jutsu. Haku questioned as she scribbled down a note on her pad. Yes, Gaara answered shortly. The Chidori, Baki supplied helpfully. Haku's eyes widened in recognition before schooling her features once more. And just how did you end up on the receiving end of Hataki-san's jutsu? The foolish Uchiha believed it would defeat me. He was wrong. The ice manipulator grimaced. She had gotten a look at Sasuke's arm before one of the senior medics took over. It wasn't pretty. Sasuke was lucky the arm wasn't completely useless. Even so, the healing process would be lengthy. Tsunade herself would also have to be included on the treatment before all was said and done. I see. Well, all the more reason for me to help you. It's not every day you survive an assassination jutsu. Gaara looked directly at her. Not anymore. Haku didn't bother hiding her reaction. She half gasped, half laughed before controlling herself. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, have a seat. Gaara looked at her sharply, and Haku simply gestured behind him to the chair Takashi had just brought in. Her voice tightened to one of command. Sit down, Gaara-san. It took everything Temari and Baki had not to let their jaws drop as they watched Gaara comply. The only reason Naruto wasn't decapitated by an Anbu blade was that his arrival was precipitated by a flying Sunanin. That made them pause long enough to recognize him as a Konoha loyal. Once Naruto landed, the cloaked elites went back to intently watching their leader fight with Orochimaru. After a second of this, Naruto spoke up. What the hell are you all doing? Shouldn't we be trying to take down the barrier? The lead Anbu shook his head minutely. That barrier is one of the most advanced shielding techniques ever invented. We have no way of bringing it down other than to wait. Wait for what? For the barrier to be released or for the ones controlling it to run out of chakra? However, those four are marked as the elite of Orochimaru's forces. There's no way we could deplete their chakra and still be able to fight afterwards. Naruto racked his brain for any information on barriers, and came up with very little. However, one thing stuck out. If we attack the barrier, it makes them work harder, right? They'd run out of chakra faster. Yes, but as I just said, we would not be able to deplete their chakra and still be able to fight afterwards. And certainly not someone on the level of Orochimaru. Naruto's face darkened. Well, you guys just be ready to fight. Ignoring the shocked body language of Squad, Naruto pulled up an enormous amount of chakra. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 500 clones popped into view, surrounding the ominous barrier. In unison, the clones started forming hand seals. Kaiten, Enden, Futen, Renkuden, Futen, Repushu, Suten, Tepudama. Hundreds of ninjutsu crashed into the purple flame barrier, making it flicker violently, but it still held. Most of the Naruto clones snarled and started forming more hand seals as several others broke off to fight incoming Oto forces. After 3 more jutsu barrages, the shield abruptly fell. The observers immediately had their attentions focused on the battle-worn form of their Hokage, with a 6-armed team with a broken N at his feet. Without the supporting corner being controlled by Kidomaru, the barrier failed. The Anbu leapt into the fight with fervor not usually seen. They knew they would likely but Orochimaru had attacked the Hokage, and they would do everything in their power to K the snake. Sarutobi panted as he watched his Anbu go after his traitorous student, blades drawn. Orochimaru was holding him off with little difficulty, and with the Kusanagi deployed, it was only a matter of time before they fell. Sure enough, Orochimaru had gotten enough of a break to run through 5 hand seals and released a concussive blast of air that knocked back all his attackers. That damn brat, Orochimaru thought harshly. I'll have to play it safe and conserve my chakra with the barrier down. Kuchiyos, Edo Tensei. Sarutobi watched in horror as twin coffins rose up from the ground, marked with the kanji for 1 and 2. The doors fell away and the Sandaime found himself facing his teachers and predecessors. It's been a long time, eh, monkey? The Nadaime joked. You've gotten old, haven't you, Sarutobi? The Shodaime greeted. I didn't wish to meet you again on this plane of existence, Sarutobi said gravely. It is regrettable, prepare to depart for the afterlife once more. Edo Tensei, I suppose we won't have a pleasant reunion then, the Nadaime grimaced. Looks like we'll be on opposite sides for once, Sarutobi, the Shodaime frowned. Enough idle chatter, Orochimaru snapped. 2 tagged kunai were produced and seemed to melt into the back of the Hokage's heads. Their eyes went glassy and unfocused as they fell under the control of Konoha's most famous criminal. The 6 Anbu had regained the bearings and were intent on protecting their leader, even if it was from his old teachers. They drew their blades once more and charged their new enemies. Meanwhile, Naruto finished setting up his plan. All the clones that remained after the barrier fell darted in to stall the resurrected cages. They stood absolutely no chance, and were even less than cannon fodder, but they would do the job. Clouds of smoke were appearing every few seconds, but the Shodaime and Nadaime were being delayed as long as it took to take out the never-ending wave of clones. Orochimaru sneered as he saw the blonde duplicates enter the fight. There was no hope for him to find the original in that crowd, and he had to keep his attention on Sarutobi. He dodged under the recently summoned staff form of the monkey boss, backing up to keep distance. He tossed a few token kunai and almost smiled as he saw a clone disappear from one of them. Sarutobi pressed his attack against Orochimaru, striking quickly with his transformed staff. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see Orochimaru's remaining 3 guards moving in to flank him. He spun his staff, knocking them back, and was surprised as a hand shot out of the chest of the gray-haired one in an attempt to grab Enma. It failed, but it reminded Sarutobi that he wasn't fighting normal everyday shinobi. Tayuya, Jirubo, Sakan and Akon felt the familiar pain stretch across their skin as their curse seals activated. They moved in to try and take down the old man, but they were too young to know the true danger of the aged ninja before them. Sarutobi was known as the Professor because he knew all the jutsu in Konoha that weren't specifically affiliated with a clan. However, that wasn't his only name. Due to his mastery of ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu and unyielding battlefield presence, Sarutobi was described as the god of shinobi. In his prime, he was able to single-handedly hold off the complete forces of Hidden Bluffs, now AS Village, and once defeated Hanzo the Salamander. Even in his advanced age, he was a terribly fierce combatant, and as Orochimaru's personal guard moved in, he proved that. The butt of Enma's staff form slammed into Tayuya's stomach at a blinding speed, cracking several ribs. Another swing left Sakan cradling a broken arm. Jirubo quickly fell to the ground, unconscious. Orochimaru gritted his teeth as his ninja fell to his former sensei. He had been counting on Sarutobi's age taking away some of his former skill. It looked like the old man wasn't as out of shape as he hoped. Kusanagi clanged off of Enma's staff form in a shower of sparks, but there was no visible damage to the staff. Kusanagi was supposed to be able to cut through anything, but Enma's staff form was supposed to be unbreakable. Now it was just a question of which legendary weapon would live up to its reputation. 3 Naruto clones charged the Shodaime, dispersing quickly as the cage struck them, but the delay was enough for a crow-masked Anbu to slip an explosive tag on his leg. Boom! The explosion was enough to kick up dust and obscure everyone's vision for a moment. When the air cleared, a legless Shodaime was the sight that greeted them. The remaining Naruto clones, few that they were, cheered at the sight, only to groan in unison as the dust and ashes reformed the leg good as new. The roof was littered with trees and cages of wood, along with water deposits left behind by the Nadaime's techniques. The Naruto clones were nothing more than a nuisance at this point, but did allow for the Anbu members to set up attacks more readily. Wounds on the 2 brothers were healed as quickly as they were inflicted, and every failed king blow disheartened the fighters just a little more. 2 of the Anbu were one speared by a tree and the other pulverized by an intense blast of water. Only 50 Naruto clones remained, and their number was dwindling rapidly. Orochimaru grimaced as his arms shook from the force of yet another one of Sarutobi's staff strikes. Enma's staff form was giving no quarter and Kusanagi had yet to do anything other than cosmetic damage to it. Another blow only confirmed the snake's suspicions. He wouldn't be able to win this battle. His old sensei was too strong. Orochimaru had known he would win if everything went to plan. Sarutobi would be locked away from all help, on his own against the former leaders of Konoha and himself. There was no way he would be able to win against that force. Then everything fell apart. The blonde brat's attacks broke Kidomaru's concentration and forced the six-armed nin to drop the secondary barrier, allowing Sarutobi to K him, breaking the entire thing. With the added reinforcements, Orochimaru was forced to conserve his chakra, and could only summon 2 of the former cages. Summoning the Yondaime would have most likely won the battle, but it would have left him incapacitated and protected only by the rest of his guard. After witnessing Sarutobi effortlessly take them apart, it was a good thing he didn't choose that path. Even with just the 2 brothers, it should have been enough to beat the old man. But with the Anbu holding their attention, Orochimaru was on his own. And he was failing. His decision was made. You have won this round, sensei, but you have by no means won the war. Tayuya, Jirubo, Saken, we retreat. The now conscious Otonin nodded and sped away into the trees, leaving Orochimaru to sneer at Sarutobi once more. You may follow me, but if you do, your village will be decimated. There will be no one left to defeat my slaves if you leave. Sarutobi's eyes flicked over to see the last of his Anbu fall to one of the Shodaime's strikes, and no Naruto clones left. When he looked back, his former student was gone. Sarutobi resigned himself as he created a cage bunshin and started the seal set for his final jutsu. However, it seemed he wouldn't be able to finish as his resurrected teachers charged him, poised for king strikes, and at their speed, they would reach him long before he finished. He closed his eyes as he saw the inevitable coming. Only it never came. He cracked one eye and saw Naruto spitted on the Shodaime's wooden blade, and the Nadaime being restrained by Enma, back in his monkey form. The skewered Naruto locked his hands on the Shodaime's blade, not allowing it to be pulled out. He turned to look at the aged Hokage and smiled ruefully. Sorry, Oji-san. 10 Naruto clones hopped out from their hiding places and piled onto the restrained Hokages, 5 to each brother. Bunshin Daibakura. One shouted, and Sarutobi was blown far away by the shockwave. Sarutobi's vision wavered as he stood on shaking legs. But he wasn't about to do anything else until he knew Naruto's condition. He knew it was useless. Naruto had just been caught in an explosion that had just completely destroyed the Hokages. He was just glad they didn't seem to be regenerating once more. Though it made sense. There was nothing left of them. There was also no reason to believe Naruto would have survived either. Except that Naruto made a point of doing the impossible all the time. In the crater formed by the explosion, Sarutobi's eyes leaked as he found the boy he considered a grandson. Naruto was in his natural form, in more ways than one. His tails were splayed out underneath him, and not a stch of clothing had survived to preserve Naruto's dignity. Blood flowed from too many wounds, and burns covered a good deal of the blonde's body. Ignoring the strain it placed on his body, Sarutobi activated the Shunshin, and appeared in the infirmary. Tsunade, he shouted, and saw the beautiful woman stick her head out from behind a curtain. What? She demanded, ill-tempered. Sarutobi stalked over and entered the curtain, seeing the Uchiha boy's arm in the process of being treated. Tsunade's eyes widened as she realized just how damaged her sensei was, but Sarutobi simply waved her attention off. Will he survive if you leave? He asked. She looked back at the black-haired patient. Yes, it's not life-threatening. But I'm not about to leave in the middle of an operation. Yes you are. Sarutobi made to leave. What? He'll live. Naruto won't. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.